Devin Carter was 36 years old the Tuesday he told his wife he had been laid off, and her first call was not to him. He drove a 4-year-old pickup and worked as a project manager at a mid-tier logistics firm in Charlotte. The kind of man whose colleagues knew him as steady and quiet, and never quite as remarkable as the room required. Renata's friends called him dependable in the flat tone people use when they are describing furniture. He had told her at 6 in the evening, in the kitchen, with the steady voice of a man delivering news he had thought carefully about how to deliver. He said the firm had made cuts. He said it was effective immediately. He had a few months of severance. They would figure it out. She had looked at him for a moment with an expression he could not fully read, said she was sorry, and asked if he wanted dinner. He said yes. He went upstairs. 12 minutes later, he heard her go to the back of the house and close the laundry room door. What her first call cost her was $64,000 she had already moved, and the $240,000 she had been counting on taking. What she had said on that call, to a man named Andre, in a voice she believed no one would ever hear, was that Devin did not have anything she did not already know about. She had been wrong by approximately $2 million. She had no idea that the laundry room had been listening for 4 days. What happened next would cost Renata Carter everything she had spent 16 months carefully engineering. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. Devin's mornings started before the light was fully up. Had started that way for years, since before there was a reason anyone else would have recognized. He was at the drafting table in the spare room by 5:30 most days, reviewing project drawings for the construction company that operated under a holding company name that did not appear in any conversation Renata had ever been part of. He had been doing this work, the real work, the work that mattered, since before he met her, and he had done it quietly, which was how he did everything that mattered. The house on Meridian Street in Charlotte knew a different version of him. The house on Meridian Street knew a project manager who drove a work truck and fixed things himself when they needed fixing, and brought his lunch most days, because he was not the kind of man who needed to be seen at restaurants. The kitchen backsplash was his work. The deck off the back of the house was his work. The raised garden beds along the south fence had been producing since May, and he had been bringing bags of tomatoes to his Aunt Vera for 3 months. And Vera had already made clear that a 4th bag was expected. His grandmother had told him, in the kitchen of her house in Rock Hill, that a man who does not show his cards until the right moment is not hiding. He is waiting. There is a difference, she had said, pressing biscuits with the focused attention she brought to everything she made, between a man who has nothing to say and a man who has nothing to prove. She had looked at him when she said it the way she always looked at him, when the thing she was saying was specifically for him. She was gone now. He thought about her most mornings before the day made any demands. He had met Renata at a conference in Raleigh 7 years ago. She had been presenting on commercial real estate development, which was exactly the field Devin was building toward. And it was the kind of accident he had learned to pay attention to. She was confident and precise, and that evening at dinner with the group she asked the right follow-up questions, the kind that indicated she had actually listened to the answer before asking the next one. He had believed for a long time that the woman who asked those questions was still the person he had married. Somewhere in year 4 she had become harder to find. The change was not sudden. Changes that matter rarely are. It arrived through a shifting vocabulary, new priorities that were described as shared but felt unilateral. A colleague named Claudette, who appeared with increasing frequency and whose approach to everything she touched was the approach of someone executing a strategy rather than living a life. Devin had said nothing about Claudette. He had simply noted how certain words began appearing in the house: exposure, positioning, exit, in conversations that used to be about the weekend. 8 months ago, he had begun paying closer attention. A phone she angled away in the evenings. A schedule that did not always match what she told him. A half-heard conversation through a wall that stopped when she realized the wall was thinner than she had calculated. He had not asked about any of it directly. He had assembled what he could and waited for a test that would confirm the shape of what he was seeing. The Construction LLC, Devin Carter Construction, structured through a holding company his attorney had organized 4 years ago, had closed on its third commercial contract in October and was currently under appraisal. His attorney knew the full picture. His financial advisor knew the full picture. Renata knew he had some investments. She had not asked for details. He had not offered them. 3 weeks before the Tuesday test, he had placed a small digital recorder on the shelf above the washer-dryer unit, the same model he used on job site walkthroughs. Compact, voice-activated, accurate. He had set it the Saturday prior while Renata was at her firm's quarterly meeting, tucked behind a detergent container, angled toward the room. He had placed it because the laundry room was where she went when she wanted certainty that she was not being heard. He had noticed the pattern over 6 months. On a Tuesday evening in November, he came home and told her the firm had laid him off. He went upstairs. He waited. He heard her go to the laundry room within 12 minutes. He stood at the top of the stairs and listened. He could not make out every word from that distance, but he could make out enough. The register of the call was not grief. It was not concern. It was the low, efficient cadence of someone delivering information to a person who had been waiting to receive it, the cadence of a report, not a conversation. He heard his name once. He heard the word finally once. He heard what sounded like a date being confirmed. Then a stretch of quiet while she listened, followed by something in the tone of agreement. He went back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. His hands did not shake. He waited until he heard her return to the kitchen and begin preparing dinner. Then he went quietly down the back stairs, retrieved the recorder from the laundry room shelf, and returned to the bedroom. He plugged in his earbuds and listened to the full recording. 4 minutes and 22 seconds. The call was to a man named Andre. She said his name at the start of the call with a specific warmth reserved for someone she was certain was private. What followed was the conversation of 2 people who had already agreed on what the next steps were and were now confirming timing. She told Andre that Devin had just lost his job. Andre said something that made her laugh, not the polite laugh of a conversation, but a real one, the kind Devin had not heard directed at himself in a long time. She said the timing was good. She said her attorney had the paperwork nearly ready, and she wanted to move before Devin had time to stabilize. Then she said the sentence Devin set back and replayed 3 times. He doesn't have anything I don't already know about. He moved with the same deliberate calm that defined all his important decisions. He saved the recording to his phone, then to his laptop, then emailed the audio file to his secondary account. He pulled up their joint bank statements for the preceding 12 months. What emerged was a pattern he had suspected, but had not yet confirmed. 9 transfers over 10 months, each between $6,000 and $9,000, each executed on a weekday afternoon from their joint savings account to a personal account in Renata's name alone. The total was $64,000. Each transfer corresponded to a week when Devin had been traveling for work. He went further. He opened the shared cloud storage drive they used for household documents. In a subfolder she had labeled reference, and buried 3 levels below other folders was a PDF he had not seen before. A draft settlement proposal, prepared by a family law attorney, dated 6 weeks prior. His project manager's salary as the primary income figure, their joint savings, checking, and retirement account as the full asset picture. The settlement was structured to leave him with the minimum the state required. She had no idea how far off the number was. She was working from a picture that was missing most of the canvas. He created a new folder on his laptop. He named it with the date. He organized everything inside it with the method he applied to every project file that needed to be right before anything moved. Then he picked up his phone and called his attorney. "Celeste," he said, when she answered. "Something has developed. I need to see you at 7 tomorrow morning." Celeste Montgomery said, "I'll be here." Celeste Montgomery had practiced family law in Charlotte for 18 years. She was 52, meticulous, with reading glasses on a gold chain and the practiced calm of someone who had been brought difficult information so many times that her response to it had become entirely functional. She had handled Devon's LLC structuring 3 years ago and understood his financial landscape with precision. She read the draft settlement proposal. She reviewed the transfer summary Devon had prepared. She listened to the audio recording once through with her eyes open and once with them closed. "She is working from an incomplete picture," Celeste said when she was done. "Significantly incomplete," Devon said. "She believes she is filing against a project manager's salary and whatever joint assets her attorney identified." Celeste looked at the holding company summary on the table. The LLC, the holding company, the development contracts, none of it is in her attorney's draft. "She didn't know to look," Devon said. "What is the full valuation?" Devon told her. Celeste looked at him without changing her expression, which was itself a kind of expression. "The LLC predates the marriage? Incorporated 7 years ago," Devon said. "Before we met. That significantly simplifies the marital versus separate property question in your favor." She tapped the recording summary. "The man on the call. Andre Beaumont. Commercial property acquisitions at her firm. I believe they have been involved for some time." Celeste made a note. "I want Franklin to build the complete financial picture, everything, formatted for a full asset disclosure. And I want everything publicly available on Beaumont." She looked at Devon over her glasses. "She told you on that recording that you don't have anything she doesn't already know about." "Yes," Devon said. "She is going to have a very instructive few weeks." He drove from Celeste's office to his Aunt Vera's house in Pineville. Vera Monroe Carter, 68, retired after 25 years as a paralegal. One of 3 people who had known about the LLC since its first year, because Devon had asked her to review the original operating agreement before he signed it. Because there was no version of his life in which he would have kept something that significant. From Vera. She made coffee. They sat at her kitchen table. "Your grandfather used to say that a person who assumes the room is theirs to take has already lost the room," Vera told him, when Devon had finished. He was talking about cards. He had the gift of being right about everything regardless of the subject. She wrapped both hands around her mug. She assumed the room. "You let her. Now you correct the record." Franklin Okafor had the full financial picture assembled by Thursday. The LLC appraised at $1.9 million. The 2 development projects under active contract represented an additional $450,000 in projected revenue. The commercial property in Noda had appreciated substantially since acquisition. Celeste described the total, when she reviewed it, as transformative to any settlement framework Renata's attorney had drafted. The background check on Andre Beaumont produced something worth noting. He had incorporated a real estate investment entity 18 months prior. One of the entity's 2 acquisitions was a commercial parcel 3 blocks from Devon's Noda property. The acquisition had been financed in part through a down payment that Celeste's investigator could not fully source from public records. She noted it twice in her summary, without drawing a conclusion. Devon read the note and understood what it did and did not yet mean, and filed it accordingly. Wednesday evening he drove home and made dinner. Renata came in at 7 with the easy composure of a person who believes the most consequential decision of their immediate future is already settled. She asked how the job search was going. He said he had some conversations scheduled for next week. She said that sounded positive. He set her plate at her place, and they sat across from each other at the kitchen table and talked about a development project she had read about in the paper and what it might mean for property values on the corridor. He said he thought the effect would be positive overall. She agreed. His face was completely calm, and she did not know that he was calm the way a completed structure is calm, because every load-bearing element was already in place and had been for some time. Real power operated in quiet rooms. He had been building this one for years. The Saturday conversation had been Renata's idea. She had come to Devon on Thursday evening with the composure of a woman who had made a decision and was managing the announcement of it. She said they needed to talk. She had some things she wanted to put on the table. That was the phrase she used, put on the table, and Devon noted it. She said she had asked her attorney to join them, to keep things organized. She said it in the tone of someone who has already drafted the agenda. Devon said that sounded fine. He said he would make sure the table was ready. Saturday morning came cold and clear. Devon had the coffee made before 7. He had set the dining room table with the care he brought to any setup that mattered. Celeste arrived at 8:45. Vera arrived at 9. When Renata came downstairs at 9:15, dressed and composed and carrying her portfolio, she found 3 people already seated. She stopped in the doorway. Devon looked up from his coffee. "Sit down," he said, without urgency. "Cream is on the table." Renata's attorney arrived at 9:30, Jennifer Cole, polished, prepared, accustomed to walking into rooms she understood. She looked at Celeste. Something in her professional composure adjusted in a way that was not subtle. Renata opened her portfolio. "I think we understand why we're here," she said. "We understand some of it," Devon said. "Let me add to the picture." Celeste placed the full asset disclosure at the center of the table. 14 pages. Jennifer read the first page. She read the second. She set it down and looked at Renata. Renata was looking at the numbers with the particular focus of someone recalibrating everything they have built a plan on top of. What Renata did not know, sitting at that table, was that she had never once been working from the whole picture. She had been building a case against a man she had invented, and the man sitting across from her was something else entirely. Devon Carter Construction LLC has operated for 7 years, Celeste said, in the even register of someone who has been in this room before. It was incorporated prior to this marriage. The holding company holds 1 commercial property in Noda, 2 active development contracts, and a liquid reserve. The full valuation is on page 2. She looked at Jennifer. "None of this appears in the settlement proposal your office drafted 6 weeks ago, which my client located in a shared cloud storage folder in your client's possession." Renata's jaw set. Devon placed the recorder on the table. He did not press play. He did not explain it. He set it between them and let it sit there, and the weight of it, the simple fact of its existence, of what was inside it, settled over the room the way a load settles on the right beam. Renata looked at the recorder. She looked at Devon. Something moved through her expression that was not entirely anger and not entirely fear, and was a combination of both arriving in the same moment. "You told me you lost your job," she said. "I told you the firm had made cuts," Devon said, in the same measured tone he used on every job site where a problem needed to be named without theater. "That was true. I was not among them. I needed to understand what your first call would be. He set his hands flat on the table. Now I do. Jennifer leaned toward her client and spoke quietly. Renata shook her head once with the precision of someone declining a suggestion they have already considered. Devon, her voice was controlled and aimed at something she still believed might be accessible. Whatever you think you heard, we can talk about this like two people who built something together. We have 8 years. That has to be worth more than a recorder and a folder. Vera at the end of the table did not raise her voice. Baby, she said. In the patient register of a woman who had spent 25 years watching people try to walk back what was already in the record. The man you thought you were leaving was never the man sitting across from you. I'd read what's on that table before you say anything further. Renata looked at Vera. She looked at the 14 pages. She looked at the recorder. Jennifer requested a brief recess. Devon poured himself more coffee and sat with Vera while the attorneys stepped into the hallway. Vera looked at him with the expression of a woman who had known exactly how this morning was going to unfold. Your grandfather, she said, would have enjoyed this table. Yes, Devon said. He would have. The attorneys returned after 14 minutes. Jennifer spoke. Celeste responded. A framework for revised proceedings was established in broad terms. When it was finished, Devon stood and buttoned his jacket and looked at Renata one final time. Without hostility, without satisfaction, with the clear-eyed assessment of a man who has completed a necessary inspection and found what he expected to find. You said I don't have anything you don't already know about, he said. I hope the last hour has been useful. He walked to the front door. He put on his coat. He had a site walkthrough in 40 minutes. He went to work. He did not look back. 9 months passed like a job completed on time and under budget. Devon was at the Noda development site on a Saturday morning in August, his site, formally and without complication, the holding company's name on the permit board at the fence line, standing with coffee and a rolled set of drawings watching the steel frame that had gone up over the preceding 3 weeks catch the early light from the east. The framing crew had done good work. He had told them so on Thursday, and he had meant it plainly, the way he always meant things. The LLC had signed a 4th contract in May, a mixed-use development in South Charlotte, the largest project Devon had undertaken to date. Franklin had revised the valuation twice since spring. The divorce had finalized in June on terms Celeste described, without editorial comment, as appropriate given the complete documented record. Renata had settled for what the law determined she was entitled to, which was not what she had planned for. Andre Beaumont had separated from her firm in March, for reasons the firm had not made public, but that Devon understood through the professional network that tracked these things without seeking them out. The investment entity Andre had incorporated, the one with the parcel near Devon's Noda property, had dissolved in April. Devon had registered all of it and moved on. A woman named Simone had been introduced to him by Vera at a 4th of July gathering, a structural engineer at a firm Devon had collaborated with on a city contract, who had looked at his site drawings that afternoon with the focused attention of someone who understood exactly what she was looking at and found it genuinely interesting. They had talked for 2 hours on Vera's porch about load specifications and mixed-use design and the particular challenges of developing in the Noda corridor. She asked the right follow-up questions. She paid for dinner the following Saturday without making a discussion of it, said it was nothing. He had believed her. On that August morning, Devon unrolled the drawings against the fence post and studied the next phase in the light that came in clean and early from the east. The steel was straight. The foundation was sound. The work ahead was clear. A man who does not show his cards until the right moment is not hiding. He is waiting. Devon had waited. The cards had been on the table. The table had held. He rolled the drawings back up and finished his coffee and went to work. He was solvent. He was building. He was exactly where he was always going to end up. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.